When Dad passed away, I never expected to be the one left in the dark. The funeral was a blur of grief and family politics. Everyone was grieving, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Dad had always been a complicated man, with a love for mystery and secrecy. He had a way of making everyone feel like they didn't know him completely. But that was just how he was, distant and aloof. But when the will was read, everything I thought I knew about my family was shattered. My older brother, Jake, always the golden child, was given $40 million. And I was given a rusty toolbox. A cheap, metal box that was barely held together by the hinges. Nothing more. I remember sitting there, stunned, watching as my brother's face lit up with that wide, smug grin of his. $40 million. Just like that. He barely looked at me, too busy reveling in his windfall, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Congratulations. Son, the lawyer had said to Jake. You've been entrusted with your father's fortune, and we trust you'll do great things with it. I sat there, trying to keep my composure, pretending to smile. But inside, I felt betrayed. I'd been Dad's daughter, always there when he needed me. I helped him with his business, with his health, and everything in between. And this was how I was repaid. And then, it was my turn. The lawyer handed me the toolbox, and that was it. No explanation. No words of encouragement or even a pat on the back. Just a rusty toolbox. I tried to mask my confusion and anger. But I could feel the eyes of the family on me, the silent judgment. What was I supposed to do with this? Was this some kind of cruel joke? But as I looked at the toolbox in my hands, I noticed something. There was a folded piece of paper sticking out from underneath the lid. My heart skipped a beat. Was it a note? An explanation? I opened it carefully, my fingers trembling with anticipation. As I unfolded the paper, I saw the neat handwriting that I recognized immediately. It was Dad's handwriting. This toolbox is worth more than any check I could have written. If you truly want to understand why, open it. My breath caught in my throat. Open it. What was inside that would explain this? What had I missed? I glanced at Jake. He was too busy inspecting his new fortune, already planning what to buy, what to invest in. I wondered if he even realized that there was more to this than just the money. My pulse quickened as I slowly opened the rusty lid. My mind racing with possibilities. But what I found inside ... I could never have imagined. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. Inside the toolbox, buried beneath some old tools and screws, was a small leather-bound journal. It looked old, weathered, like something my father had kept hidden for years. I could feel a strange chill run down my spine as I pulled it out. This was it. The answer I had been looking for. Little did I know. This journal would change everything I thought I knew about my family. I held the small leather-bound journal in my hands, the weight of it heavy with expectation. My fingers traced the worn edges, as if somehow that could unlock its secrets. My heart raced. What had Dad hidden in here? Why had he left it for me? And why did it feel like it was my real inheritance, while Jake got millions? I opened the journal slowly. The pages yellowed with age. The ink faded, but still legible. The first few pages were filled with notes, sketches, and thoughts, things I didn't recognize. Dad's handwriting was neat, but had an urgency to it, like he was trying to record something important, something he couldn't forget. The first entry was dated more than 20 years ago. It all began with the land. The plans I've set into motion will either save us or ruin us. But I'm running out of time. I can't keep this secret much longer. There's no going back now. My breath caught. The land, what was he talking about? I had no idea what kind of plans Dad had made. He never mentioned any secret project or anything of the sort. He always kept his business dealings quiet, private, but this was different. I turned the page. It was a map drawn by hand showing the outline of a property I didn't recognize. The map looked old, like it had been drawn decades ago, yet it was detailed, with lines marking boundaries, plots of land, and areas labeled with cryptic initials. One line, near the bottom, was marked with a single word, Project Red. I turned the next page, feeling my pulse quicken. Dad had never spoken to me about any project called Red, and the fact that it was so heavily emphasized made me even more curious. What had he been involved in? Project Red is more than just a property deal. It's a chance for all of us to secure a future one that they will never be able to touch. But I can't do it alone. Lily needs to know. She's the only one who can finish what I've started. My hands trembled as I read the words. My name, he'd written about me. But what did he mean by finish what I've started? Before I could process it, I flipped another page and found something even more chilling: pages and pages of legal documents. They were printed out, glued into the journal. They looked like contracts, deeds, and documents related to land ownership, companies, and more ominously something about undisclosed assets and global interests. I could hardly believe my eyes. Dad had been involved in something huge. It wasn't just the land. It wasn't just a simple inheritance. These documents, these contracts, spoke of a network, one that spanned continents, connected powerful people, and involved hidden funds. And suddenly, I realized the $40 million my brother had gotten wasn't the only thing Dad had been working on. One of the contracts mentioned a trust fund in my name, tied to a company that didn't exist on paper, at least, not in any public registry. The company was called Carter Ventures, and the language was clear. If I accepted the inheritance, I'd inherit control of the company as well. But what was Carter Ventures? Why had it been hidden? And why had Dad never told anyone about it? The more I read, the more I realized I was standing at the edge of something much darker than I could have ever imagined. The next page held another note, scrawled hastily. If you're reading this, it means I've gone too far, and they're coming for you. You'll have to trust no one, especially not Jake. He's already been bought. I froze, reading the words again. What was Dad trying to say? Jake bought my brother? I quickly scanned the rest of the page, my breath quickening as I read the final sentence. The trust is yours now. But if you want to survive, you need to move fast. The first thing you have to do, burn this journal. I stared at the page in disbelief. Burn it? What could possibly be so dangerous in here that Dad wanted me to destroy it? I looked at the journal, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I didn't know what was true or false anymore. All I knew was that something dark was buried in this story, something my father had kept hidden for years. Suddenly, the weight of the rusty toolbox in my hands felt insignificant. The money, Jake's money, was nothing compared to what I had just uncovered. And as I closed the journal and stared at the map, the image of my father's warning about trust echoed in my mind. I wasn't just dealing with land. I was dealing with a legacy of deception. And now, I was the one who had to decide how deep into it I was willing to go. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, holding the journal in my hands, the weight of my father's words heavy in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had stepped into something far beyond my control. The fact that Dad had kept all of this hidden from the family, kept it from my only, made the situation more confusing, more dangerous. The mention of my brother, Jake, stopped me dead in my tracks. He's already been bought. My heart pounded as I thought about the man I'd known all my life, the one who had everything handed to him on a silver platter. Jake never cared about the family business. He had never shown any interest in the small company Dad had built over the years. But now, Dad's words felt like a warning. Jake wasn't just oblivious, he might be part of this twisted game. I turned the pages of the journal slowly, the sharp ink marks blurring in my vision as I desperately tried to find any more clues. But there were no answers, just cryptic statements about trust, deception, and survival. The deeper I went, the more I understood that Dad had built this empire of shadows, and I had somehow become its reluctant heir. I was tangled in a web of deceit I didn't even know existed. The mention of burning the journal gnawed at me. Why would Dad want me to destroy the very thing that held the answers? Was he trying to protect me, or was it a way of keeping me in the dark, just as he had done for years? I couldn't bring myself to burn it, not yet. This journal was the only thing that might explain everything Dad had kept hidden from the family. But as I sat there, I realized one thing: the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just about money. It was about power, secrets, a legacy that had been passed down and buried in shadows. The more I thought about the documents, the more I realized how much trouble I might be in. If there were people, dangerous people, connected to Carter Ventures, I had to be careful. The threats were real, and they were coming for me, just as Dad had warned. I glanced at the check again. Jake had been handed everything on a silver platter. But I knew this wasn't about a mere inheritance, it was about controlling what Dad had left behind, and right now, that control was in my hands. But at what cost? I knew I couldn't face this alone. The feeling of being watched was suffocating. I needed to find someone I could trust, someone who knew about these things, someone who could help me navigate this twisted legacy Dad had left for me, but who... Suddenly, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway made my heart skip a beat. I rushed to the window, my pulse racing as I saw Jake's car parked in front of the house. The last thing I needed was him showing up now. Not when I was so close to finding out what was really going on. I grabbed the journal and shoved it under the couch cushion, just as the doorbell rang. I stood frozen for a moment, the weight of what was happening pressing down on me. Could I keep the truth hidden from Jake? Could I trust him? I took a deep breath and opened the door. Jake stood there, a big grin on his face as usual, but his eyes betrayed something deeper, something darker. "Hey sis," he said, his voice too casual. "I thought I'd drop by and check on things. You know, with Dad's will and all. You doing okay?" I felt a knot in my stomach. I couldn't just let him in without knowing what he knew. But I didn't have time to waste. I needed answers and I needed them fast. "I'm fine, Jake," I said, my voice steady, though every part of me screamed for him to leave. "But I think we need to talk about Dad." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Talk about Dad?" He chuckled. "You know, you're taking this whole inheritance thing a little too seriously." His words hit me like a punch. There was no way he understood. There was no way he knew what was really at stake. "Maybe we need to talk about more than just the money," I said, meeting his gaze, my voice low. "Maybe we need to talk about what Dad was really involved in, what he left behind." For a split second, I saw something flash in Jake's eyes, something I hadn't expected. A flicker of recognition, or was it fear? Before he could respond, a loud knock interrupted us. My blood ran cold. I wasn't expecting anyone else. Who could it be? Jake's expression shifted, his confident facade cracking for the first time. "Who's that?" he asked, his voice sharp. I swallowed hard. "I don't know." As I opened the door, my heart sank. Standing in front of me was a man I had never seen before, but his eyes were cold, and he was holding a briefcase. "Ms. Davis," the man said in a low voice. "I'm here on behalf of Carter Ventures." I froze, staring at the man standing on my doorstep. His dark, sharp suit contrasted with the grey sky behind him. There was something unsettling about his presence, as if he knew more than he should, more than anyone should about me and my family. I glanced at Jake, whose earlier smugness had evaporated. His eyes darted between me and the stranger, "Ms. Davis." The man repeated, his voice cold but clear. "I'm here on behalf of Carter Ventures." Carter Ventures. The name sent a shock through me, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. It was the company mentioned in the journal, the one Dad had left me control of. I had barely begun to process it, and now this man was here, bringing the world of shadows and secrets right to my doorstep. I felt the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. I didn't know what to say, but Jake, ever the opportunist, was the first to speak. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, taking a step forward. "What's this about Carter Ventures?" The man didn't flinch. "I'm Mr. Klein. I represent the board of Carter Ventures. We need to discuss the future of the company with Ms. Davis." I could see Jake's expression shift, his eyes narrowing with something I couldn't quite place. He moved to speak, but I raised my hand to stop him. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steady. Despite the rising panic inside me, Mr. Klein's eyes flicked toward Jake, as if evaluating whether to address him. "This is a private matter for Ms. Davis," he said. his tone firm. I felt the air crackle with unspoken words between the three of us. There was something off about this man, and the way he spoke made it clear whatever this was. It was bigger than just an inheritance. "Jake," I said quietly, "why don't you head inside? I'll talk to him." Jake looked at me like I had just asked him to jump into a river. "What? You're seriously going to talk to some stranger, alone?" He sounded incredulous. "I'm fine," I said, my voice sharper this time, though my heart was pounding. "Just go inside." He hesitated, his eyes flicking between me and Mr. Klein. Finally, after a long moment, he muttered, "Fine, but don't take too long." I watched him walk inside, leaving me with this mysterious man who had just dropped into my life without warning. The door clicked shut, and I turned back to Mr. Klein. "Let's go inside," I said, trying to keep the quiver from my voice. "What's all this about?" Mr. Klein nodded and followed me into the living room, where I sat down, my hands instinctively gripping the armrests of the chair. The air in the room felt thick, and I could feel my pulse racing. This was it. Everything had led up to this moment. He placed the briefcase on the table between us and opened it. Inside, there were more documents. This wasn't just a discussion, it was a meeting, and the weight of it all seemed to sink deeper into my chest. "You've inherited much more than just the company," Mr. Klein said as he carefully slid a document across to me. "There are responsibilities tied to this inheritance that go beyond the financials. Your father, before his death, took actions that created ties with certain individuals, and now, those individuals are expecting results." I picked up the document. My eye scanned the contents, but nothing made sense. There were names I didn't recognize, and terms like undisclosed agreements and mutual interest. My mind raced to make sense of it. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice suddenly tight. "What did Dad get himself involved in?" Mr. Klein leaned forward, his expression serious. "Your father had more enemies than you realized, and the inheritance he left you is a contract one that ties you to Carter Ventures. To those enemies, and to people who will do anything to gain control, they're waiting for you to fulfill your part of the agreement." I swallowed hard. "What's my part?" "The next step is simple," he said, his tone chillingly calm. "You need to prove your loyalty, your worth. Your father left specific instructions to ensure you could take over his dealings, but first, you'll have to face the consequences of his choices." The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating. I stared at Mr. Klein, trying to process his words, trying to understand what kind of game I had just inherited. "You're saying this isn't just a business deal?" I asked, my voice cracking. "This is about survival." Mr. Klein's expression remained unreadable, but his eyes held something I couldn't quite identify. Was it pity? Or something more sinister? "I'm afraid so," he said quietly. "Your father made sure you'd be the key to everything, but now, it's up to you to decide how you'll play the game." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about money. This was about power, secrets, and decisions that could destroy everything. And the worst part? I didn't know if I had any choice but to play along. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. With every passing second, I realized this was just the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. Kay could feel the weight of Mr. Klein's words pressing down on me. "Prove your loyalty, your worth." Those words echoed in my mind, swirling like a storm I couldn't escape. I had never imagined that inheriting my father's legacy would come with so many strings attached. But there was more to it than just a company. The threats, the enemies, the shadowy figures waiting for me to step into a world I didn't understand. This was what my father had left behind, and now, it was my turn to decide if I was willing to play their game. "Your father was involved with more than just business deals," Mr. Klein continued, his eyes fixed on mine. "He had ties to powerful people who don't take kindly to being crossed. This inheritance, these responsibilities, they're tied to something much bigger than you think." I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. "What do you mean, bigger?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Klein leaned forward, his eyes sharp. Your father didn't just leave you Carter Ventures, he left you something that could change the balance of power in ways you can't even imagine. If you play this right, you could control everything. But if you fail, he trailed off, letting the silence speak for itself. The gravity of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. Control everything. I could hardly control my own life at that point, let alone a global empire filled with shady deals and dangerous enemies. Yet, the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was no turning back now. If I didn't step up, if I didn't take charge, I would lose everything: my father's legacy, my future, and the only thing that could help me break free from this web of lies. I glanced down at the documents in front of me. I could feel the weight of the decision in my hands. The map, the contracts, the cryptic messages from my father, it all led to this moment. But I was still uncertain. The stakes were higher than anything I had ever imagined, and the people involved were dangerous. Why me? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Why was I chosen for this? Mr. Klein didn't hesitate. Because your father knew you were the only one who could handle it. He trusted you, Lily. He saw something in you, something that the others didn't see. You have the strength to navigate this world, to control the legacy he left behind. But you have to want it. You have to be willing to fight for it. His words hit me like a slap to the face. Fight for it. That was the part I hadn't been ready for. I had spent my life running from the chaos my father had created, trying to live a quiet, normal life. But now, it seemed, I had no choice but to embrace the darkness. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized what I had to do. It wasn't just about taking control of a company anymore. It was about survival. It was about facing the shadows my father had left behind, and standing tall in a world that wanted to break me. Okay, I said, my voice firm with newfound determination. I'll do it. I'll take control. But I need to know everything. No more secrets. Mr. Klein nodded, his expression unreadable. You'll get what you need. But remember, Lily, the moment you step into this world, there's no going back. Your life will never be the same. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle deep in my chest. This was it. The point of no return. But I had made my choice, and now, I would face whatever came next. Mr. Klein stood up and handed me a set of keys. These are for the office. You'll need to start right away. The first meeting is already scheduled for tomorrow. Be ready. I took the keys from him, feeling the cold metal in my palm. This was real now. There was no turning back. I wasn't just inheriting a company, I was inheriting a war. As Mr. Klein walked out, I sat there in silence, the weight of the world pressing down on me. My father had left me a legacy of secrets, lies, and power. But it was now mine to control. The question was, would I be able to survive it? If you were hooked by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Sometimes, the biggest legacies aren't about wealth, they're about power, and how far you're willing to go to claim it. Stay tuned for more stories that leave you wondering what's next.